Welcome, everybody, to the REDX Podcast. We're so happy that you're here. I'm really excited to have our guest on today. I am Curtis Fenn, president of REDX, and you are not going to regret being on the podcast today. For all of you tuning in on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere that we stream this, make sure you put your comments in. Our team will try to answer those questions. Any notable resources that are mentioned, we try to get those to you and links on there. So make sure that you participate. And again, we're here every Thursday doing these podcasts, bringing on. So our guest today is Jeremy Herrman. Really excited. Jeremy has been an agent since 2005. He's been a very successful agent since he was 18 years old, building up to selling 200 teams a year. He's been a coach for many years. He's been a trainer, and ultimately he's the co-founder of a business called Clarity Now, which is a numbers tracking, goal setting platform that really gives a lot of insight and clarity into agents and how you should be operating your business. So really excited. Enjoy. Okay, Jeremy with Clarity Now. Welcome to the REDX Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
I'm really excited. We've been chatting for a year now, on and off, about a year. And so for the viewers that are on and listening, you know, if you follow us a lot, we talk a lot about numbers. We frequently cite a study that we've repeated about 9 times over the last 12 or so years, where we do a survey to agents who are doing over $250,000 in GCI, and we do and those under $70,000 in GCI, and we kind of compare the behaviors of those two. And consistently, one of the things that separates those two groups of agents is that the high producing agents track their numbers. They understand what they're doing. They understand money making activities, and they understand where to prioritize their time based on where they're making money. And so, you know, we talk about that a lot. So when you came to me and you showed me Clarity Now and your dashboards and your ability to help people do that, you know, that was kind of, we were kindred, you know, spirits at that point, right?
We did connect right away. But you said something already that I think is really important, is the part about prioritizing. You know, the top agents, they just simply prioritize better than agents that aren't top agents. And that is the beauty of numbers. You know, we like to say that numbers tell a story. And until you know what the numbers are, you don't know what the story is. Yeah. And you know, I say all the time to my team, I don't care what the numbers are, but I need to know what the numbers are. Because once we know what the numbers are, then we know what to tweak and what to adjust. And top agents, they treat it like a business, right? I mean, what you focus on expands, and measure what matters and all the other sayings that go with that. So when you know the story of your business, it allows you to determine what chapters need to change, right? And then therefore how you need to prioritize your week and how you go about your business to get better. So that word prioritize, I think, is actually probably the key differentiator between a really, you know, high income earning agent and one that's not. Yeah.
Well, speaking of prioritization, why don't we back up a little bit and prioritize letting people get to know you a little bit? Why don't you share a little bit about your journey, your story, how you got there? And then we'll loop back around, because I think people will get why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast talking about numbers, especially this time of year. And we've talked about that. So, Jeremy, why don't you introduce you and your background, which is quite impressive, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. I'll make sure to repeat that to my wife. So I actually got my license before I finished high school. So my older brother is a double major at a university in California, and I just knew I wasn't a college guy. And I was always in sales, worked at Best Buy as a kid, did a good job as, you know, talking to people and selling. And my best friend's parents were realtors. So I went to his dad and I said, hey, can I come join your team? And he said, don't even come back and ask me until you get your license. I said, okay. So I was the kid studying in school with your workbook in front for the teacher to see, and then my real estate book, you know, behind that for me to read while I'm in class. And I passed my test and I was 18 before I graduated, went back to him and said, hey, I'm licensed now. Can I join your team? So that was my entry. One of the best things they did for me is they had a coach. They were part of a coaching organization, and they believed in coaching, and they got me a coach at 19 years old. So I've always been in coaching in some capacity, and it really shaped, really who I am today in lots of ways. So I sold real estate in California for a handful of years, and then I ended up, my real estate coach was from New York, and I ended up moving to New York to build a startup with him, which was fun. So brought me from West Coast to East Coast. Did that for about a decade. In the meantime, met my wife. She was working at a company where she would set appointments, go on appointments, and get contracts signed for a different marketing company. And we were serious enough at this point. I said, honey, you realize that you are acting as if you're a real estate agent just for $70,000 a year on a salary versus doing it for yourself. So I got her into the industry, and she crushes it now. Her success is all her own, but it's the same skill sets. And then about 6 years ago, I became a coach myself. So in coaching realtors. And one of the things I noticed right away, Curtis, I've always been a data-driven spreadsheets person, self-taught. But when I started coaching, it became clear how many agents struggle with knowing their numbers. And as a coach, I found it challenging to coach you to help you, determine your goal, determine the production, and hit the goal without knowing all this information. So I built a big old spreadsheet for my coaching clients, and I got fortunate that one of my good friends is a software engineer, and I showed him my spreadsheet, and we ultimately spent the last handful of years, 4 years or so, turning my spreadsheet into software, which is now Clarity Now. So now I'm the CEO and co-founder of Clarity Now, kind of by accident in a lot of ways, frankly. It wasn't, I'm not a tech background. I'm a business person that understands numbers, and I happen to have a good co-founder that made a product come to life.
So awesome. And that's a lot in a short amount of time. Yeah. I think for everybody watching, I think Jeremy glazed over a little bit of his coaching experience. I've had a lot of people who I've been associated with a lot longer than Jeremy, who have really talked highly about your coaching and your ability to influence their big teams and what they've done. So pretty awesome. So you have the authority to speak on some of these things. We've mentioned numbers now. We open with numbers. Top producing agents understand their numbers because it helps them make data-driven decisions and it helps them prioritize. Let's talk as if this is a brand new concept. What numbers are we talking about?
Meaning I'm speaking to an agent who says, what do I track?
Yeah. What numbers should an agent be tracking to help them make better decisions in their business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love that you started there too, so we can start from the beginning. Well, okay. So to me, it starts, and I think this is a big struggle that a lot of agents have, and probably just business owners in general, because we're not really that different, is determining what are you actually building towards? What is the goal? Right? Real estate's one industry where, we can work all year long, at the end, see how much money we made, and then determine, was it enough? Right? Versus building a plan based on how much money you want to earn. And by the way, when I say that, I don't mean GCI, especially as you start to build a team, which I know a lot of your users are, high producing individual agents that are starting teams, or maybe they already have teams. As a coach, I really don't give a crap about GCI. I care about net income. Right. So are you building a plan?
You can't spend GCI.
No, but that's what people get the awards for.
Yep.
Right. So this industry has, they try to chase awards versus chase purpose. Right. So the first thing starts with, what is your actual goal? What are you building towards? How much money do you need to earn for that to happen? Whether we're talking about, financial freedom and the number of properties you'll need to buy to get to financial freedom, or something different. So having a goal, a production goal that's determined by net income, is where I would start.
Okay.
So that's just step one. How many homes do you have to sell to net the number that you desire?
And net is determined based on what your bigger objective is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's your purpose, because if your purpose is net, you'll never be satisfied. But if your purpose is, I want that beach house, or I want summers with my kids, or I want, I think you have that purpose, and then you you work backwards to get the net, the net number with production. But even net, look, as silly, and some of you might be rolling your eyes at this question, but legitimate, I see this every tax season. Nobody's thought about net income. Nobody's even thought about that until they start having to deal with expenses or, that renewals and dues and everything that starts to come around. So what is just a rule of thumb to try to figure out my net income? How do I know net?
Yeah. So again, numbers tell a story, right? So some people say I'm just not good with numbers, and I get that. Most people aren't. The thing is, if you're building a business, we can't hide behind that as being a cute answer, right? If you're not good with numbers, you have to work harder at getting better with numbers, period, right? So the first part is, how much does it cost you to live? That's the first part. What is your actual burn rate for your family cost? And whenever someone says it cost me $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, what I usually do is I'll say, okay, great. So $12,000. You feel good about that? And they say, yeah, I think that's everything. And then I would say, excellent. So if I gave you $12,000 in the first of the month, do you have enough money to get through the end of the month? And they go, oh, it's probably more like 15. So no matter what the first answer is, usually throw a few grand on top of that. Yeah. If you want an easy way to do it, just go to the last 6 months of your bank statements for your personal household account if you manage your money well, and just average it out. So let's say in this case, someone spends $10,000 a month to live. Okay. So we have $120,000 of just breaking even as a household. So if you net, say, $150 in your business, we won't get into tax opportunities and such on this call. But if you net $150 in your real estate business after taxes, maybe you net $120 post-tax. So netting $150 in your business is just a break even for your family. We're not getting ahead financially. Make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
So determine your personal net, throw taxes on top of that, and then the difference, the gap, is you getting ahead financially. So let's say I want to, buy X, Y, and Z and also save 50 grand. Maybe I need to net 250 in my business, where post-tax, I'm probably paying 40, 50 grand in tax, with write-offs. Talk to your accountant, right? Yeah. So I'm net 200 post-taxes, but it costs me 120 to live. Cool. There's actually 80 grand left over.
Right.
But having a purpose for that. So it has to start with that formula first, and then into your net to determine your production, which we won't talk really about clarity now on this call, but that's one of the key features about our software is our business planning starts with net income, and then the production is determined based on that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll talk about your product more than you will for people. I mean, it's one of the only ones that considers taxes. It's one of the only dashboards that tries to help people understand at a net level what are you really making, and what does that really mean to you personally. The other thing that we just see, people don't know the expense of their business.
Yep.
They just don't even know. And so on top of that, in order to net pre-tax 250, how much money are you spending to run your business, right? To get there, which, I don't want to get ahead, but that's kind of the next step, right?
Yeah. So if you want to, let's say you want to net 250 in the business, and you have, $8,000 a month of expenses for your business, not for your family, but for your business, your assistant, listing, photography, all the things that you spend money on, coaching. Now we got, call it 100 grand of expenses. So now that 250 becomes 350, but then you also have cost of sales, which is splits with your broker or referral fees or team members, and depending upon what kind of structure you have. So it's not uncommon, especially if you're a big team. If you want to net 250, you got to do $1 million in GCI, right? For larger teams, right? If you're an individual agent, typically your cost of sale is smaller as you're kind of getting started. The bigger teams will get bigger. But, for your audience, I would, making a complete assumption here, but for your audience to net 250 with expenses, individual, to kind of becoming a small team, it probably needs to be, 500-ish in GCI, I would say. Yeah. Get around that $18 to $20 million a year mark, have cost of sales, have some splits, have, good expenses to operate, and then netting $250,000 in the end.
And if I'm okay, so keep going. The next step, you figure out now that's what you got to make.
Yep.
So
Okay.
then it's you
All
should
right.
you should know how much commission your average home sale is.
Yep. So now I know I got to do say $500,000 in GCI to net my 250, and let's say the average commission check is $10,000. Again, making math easy here. So that means we have to sell 50 houses. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we got to sell 50 houses. Okay. The next thing I do that I think is critical that a lot of people skip, and it's a huge mistake in this business, two things. Is one, you got to break that 50 units down into quarterly goals, right? How much production will you do in quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4? For a standard business, this is not true for every market because there is different seasonality in different markets. But typically you see 20% of your productions done in quarter 1, 30% quarter 2, 30% quarter 3, and then 20% in quarter 4. So on 50 units, we're going to do 10, 15, 15, and 10 per quarter of sales, closings, right? That's one. The next one, this gets a little bit in the weeds, but it really is important. And this is a big reason why a lot of agents miss their goals, by the way, is of the 50 units, how many of them are going to come from listings? Let's just say it's a 50-50 business. Okay, so we have 25 listing sales and 25 buyer sales. Well, if you're going to close 25, you have to determine how many listings you got to get signed to close 25. Because they're not going to be 100%, especially in a market where days on market's going up and it's getting more price competitive. It gets more challenging, right? I remember selling in California in 2006, 7, and 8. We had almost a 2-year supply of inventory.
Yeah.
2 years. I mean, it was 37 homes in the market and 4 going to sell. That's not even 2 years, but it was wild, right?
Yeah, we were looking up a lot of phone numbers on expired listings in California during those years.
You guys thrived in those years. That was a phenomenal time for you guys. That's where I started my career, was with REDX and calling expireds and pounding the phones. But let's say to sell 25, to close 25, you got to take 35 listings, okay? If we do that same seasonality of 20, 30, 30, and 20, that means you got to get 7 listings signed in quarter 1, 7 signed in quarter 4, and whatever the difference is there for quarter 3 or quarter 2 and quarter 3. But here's the next thing. Your quarters for activities is different than your quarters for closings. And what I mean by that is agents typically only think about their calendar year, which is January through December. So if I want to sell 50 homes January through December, and I have to take 35 listings to do that, if I take a listing on December 6th, that's not going to be a listing that closes this calendar year, right? That's going to close the following year. So then we also need to back up our dates. So a simple way to do this, and again, this is just getting deeper into the numbers, but it's, again, it's what I'm passionate about. And it's also what our software does, this whole piece we're telling you about. It's called our goal gap report. But if you add up what is your average days on market and what is how long, we call it the ramp up period, how long it takes to go from I got the listing signed to it's officially on the market. So photo staging, how long does that take you? If you add up days on market and how long it takes you, let's say it takes say it's a 45 days on market and it takes you 2 weeks to get a home live, right? 14 plus 45 is 59 days. Yeah. For math on this call, we'll just call it 60.
60 days.
Right? That means that your year starts 60 days before December 31st for taking listings. So your quarter 1 of activities is really November, December, and January to get the 7 signed that will close January, February, March. Agents, they forget about that. They start the year fresh in January, and oftentimes agents are notorious for having bad quarter 1s because they forget about the rollover of each year.
Interesting. Yeah. Which is why we wanted to get on the phone now and not in December.
Oh yeah.
Because, people need to be they shouldn't write off this year. There's still a lot of deals to be had, especially, depending on what market you're in. But yeah. But if you want to start planning for 2025, you need to be thinking about these things now. You need to have your purpose, determined. You need to understand your expenses and what your net production is going to be, so that you can start to think about the activities that will help you drive the numbers.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
do we have a dream? Do we have a goal, or do we have a plan? Right. A lot of agents unfortunately stop at dream. Most agents who listen to this, they're having a goal, right? Like they got to the goal phase, but the best go from goal to a plan. What we're talking about is a plan. It's not called set up your business goals. It's create your business plans.
Today's podcast is brought to you by REDX's Prospecting Bootcamp. If you're looking to hone your prospecting skills, overcome objections, and consistently pack your pipeline in any market, then REDX's Prospecting Bootcamp is for you. In this 3-day action-packed bootcamp, you'll master the skills necessary to set listing appointments with REDX. The bootcamp includes live script roleplay practice, objection handler training, tips to overcome your fear of prospecting, and much more. It's sure to give you the necessary tools and skills to convert more leads into appointments and appointments into listings. Plus, when you purchase Bootcamp, you get a free trial of all REDX's lead products, so you can immediately implement what you learn into your prospecting. To sign up, go to redx.com/bootcamp and you can save $100 on your ticket. We look forward to seeing you at the next Bootcamp.
So back to where we started in that study, we asked people, how many of you have a business, set business goals, and how many of you have a business plan to achieve those goals?
Oh, you did? You separated those two?
Oh yeah, we separate those two. And in the study, you can see the difference of over 200%. Over $250,000 in income. Those agents, it's like 98, 99% on both of those categories.
Yep.
For agents making less than 70%, it's still really high. You're like 85% of people still have a business goal. You still have like 60% of them have a business plan.
Okay.
But even though there's just a gap there, like it may not be the thing that makes you make $250,000. You still, money's made in the execution of that plan.
Yes. But
in absence of that plan, you've got 40% of the people who are making, average income, actually above average at 70. But I would say average to survive as a full-time agent, maybe. But at $70,000 a year, you've got 40% of them that are executing aimlessly, right? So the money's made in execution, so they still can make money.
Yeah,
but it's aimless execution.
Those are perfect people for recruiting to your team because they need the help.
Yeah,
they need the guidance. It's a perfect target market for someone who probably should join a team.
Yeah. Maybe we'll make those lists available. Just kidding.
So that's the first part. So one is having the goal and then breaking it down to quarters and then taking the planned approach and figuring out, what your activities need to be and when your timeline starts. From there, I mean, listen, this business is, it's hard, right? For those that say it's not hard, knock it off. This is hard. It's a hard business.
There's a reason why 87% of us fail within 5 years.
Yes. So every person who's listening to this call, I hope that you take the time to applaud yourself for being in the industry, for making this your career, for taking the time to educate yourself, for tapping into resources like REDX. You guys are doing a great job. So give yourself credit for that, first and foremost. And as you're building a business, there's clients, there's fires, there's systems, there's recruiting, there's number tracking, there's all these things, right? Your office is trying to get you to come to all these educational events like every other day, and you all of a sudden just become a full-time student and not a full-time realtor. So there's a lot of distractions in this business, right? So the next thing that I talk a lot on my clients about and what I just believe, there's a great book. It's by an author named Michael Michalowicz. And most people, when I mention that name, they'll think of the book Profit First. That book kicks ass. I love that book. Yeah. But he wrote another book that I'm referencing called Fix This Next. Okay, Fix This Next. And we
may have lost you.
Okay, but we're still on audio, it looks like. Okay. So it stems from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if anyone doesn't know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, look it up. But basically it's a pyramid, and the base is physiological, which is you got to have breathing, you got to have oxygen, you got to have shelter. That's the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then it goes up to different categories, right? And the way this works, and it sounds like I'm in the weeds, but I promise you this is really important, is Curtis, let's say that you and I right now, okay? You and I are hanging out. I have my basic needs are met. I feel like I have some confidence. I'm talking to you, the respect of others. Let's say I'm pretty high up in Maslow's hierarchy. But in a moment, I take a bite of a burger and I start choking on the burger, okay? I can no longer feel cool and have confidence and pay attention to the podcast if all of a sudden I can't breathe. My body instantly drops down to focusing on physiological. I have to focus on breathing. I can't hang out with you right now. I got to focus on breathing.
Yep.
Make sense? His business hierarchy of needs is the same way, where the base of the triangle is sales. It's the creation of cash. The next one up from that is profit, right? So once the sales bucket is filled, now we can go and make sure that we're as profitable as we can be. Check your expenses, check on your splits, all that stuff. Above that is order, which is systems, right? Education systems. The challenge is that most agents that I come across, we like to hang out in systems. We like to hang out because a lot of times, and this is maybe a throat punch for some people, but hanging out in systems is hiding from the work of doing sales. Right? I'll say it again. Hanging out in systems is hiding from the work of doing sales.
Yeah.
So the challenge is for a lot of businesses, their business is choking. And if their business was a person, they would say, come give me some oxygen. Like, quit hanging out up there. Drop back down to sales. I need sales. And that is so when I say this, when I'm an agent and I'm working through my goals and I'm working through my year, back to the word prioritize, how we started this call off, every single week we need to determine as the leader of our own business and our family is depending upon us, do I have permission to hang out and order this week? Because my sales are full, I have a lot of pendings, my pipeline's there. This is a week where I can focus on making systems better. Or is this a week where I need to ignore all the stuff that's in my head and all the distractions and get my butt back down to sales because my sales are dry, right? So using the goal gap of what's my goal versus where I'm at and also cash flow, those two things right there tell you the answer.
Yeah.
Is this a production week or is this a systems week?
What's two thoughts. One is there's another book and hopefully my team can find links and post these quickly in the comments for people. Fix This Next. The other one that is very similar concepts to what you're talking about is Ready, Fire, Aim. And it's talking about what you should talk about or where your focus should be at different stages of your business. But at the beginning stage, and that's what he's talking about is people want a business card and they want their glamour shots and they want to tweak their website and they want to do all this stuff. And he's going, but you don't have any money. Like who do you have to give a business card for? Sales has to be, and I love the term you use. I don't know if it's yours or from the book, but creation of cash is such an important concept for anybody to understand. It's the creation of cash that allows you to scale and to grow and to do things, which I think is really important. The other thing that you're talking about is so funny because I started very early in my sales career, right out of high school, doing two things. I did door-to-door sales and sold home security systems and pest control, and I sold cars. And I quickly became the number one sales guy selling cars, even though there'd been these career guys there. And not because I was good, it was because I was too dumb not to follow the system that they trained me on. And back then, you're going to love this because it's your software on graph paper. We used to know how many people do I need to talk to get a test drive, how many test drives we had our sales funnel broken down. And every day you'd go, you'd have a chart on a piece of graph paper and you chart to where your goal is that if I talk to this many people, I'll make the money I want to make. I'll sell this many cars. And every day I would have to put a dot to see where I was, if I was on track or not. And if I was below the line, I knew I had to focus on talking to more people. If I was above the line and talking to people, but below the line on the next stage of the sales funnel, getting, like a test drive, I would know, okay, now I need to focus on a test drive, not, and just by having those numbers in front of me, those graphs in front of me, I would even subconsciously focus on the right things to increase my end production of sales.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why did you track that? Like, why did you even care to do that? You got a job, you're a young guy. Like, why did you even do that?
I think I had a lot of faith in the guy that convinced me to go sell cars and train me. And he promised me that if you did this, you'll sell more. It was the same thing with other activities. He said, hey, if you write a thank you card and drop 2 business cards in it and send it to every sale you get, you'll sell more cars. I did that. And I just had a ton of referral, half of the cars I sold every month, just after 1 year were repeat and referral business. And you had guys there 20 years that didn't do those things.
Why did you want to sell more cars?
Oh, yeah, because I had goals. I had a purpose. I didn't want to sell cars. That's why I sold cars. It was a means to an end for me. Same with knocking doors, and X amount of doors got me this many sales, and this many sales made me this much money because I didn't want to do those things for a career. And people that do, great. I have no judgment. I think it's a great, anybody who's out there hustling, making a living and providing is I have zero judgments. It just wasn't for me. It's not what I wanted to do long term. And so to me, it was always trying to create, my purpose was to create something, more of a legacy than it was a job.
There you go.
Yeah.
It mattered to you. You had a purpose. You had a purpose, and you had someone that gave you a blueprint, and you cared. One of the things that I think I saw this on Instagram, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. I'm going to butcher the quote, but he basically said something like, if you have a goal that you continuously don't hit, either start doing what is required to hit your goal, or quit telling yourself that you want that goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it is, you had a purpose. You had a purpose, and the goal mattered. So you did the activities, and you measured what mattered. Yeah. And you had success. Makes perfect sense.
And this is what I love about podcasts is we can go on these tangents here and come back to numbers here in a second. But the other thing that I did, this could be terrible. Like, you go to a therapist and they're like, please don't follow this guy's advice, but for me, my whole life, I've personified in my mind the things that distract me from what I'm trying to do. So those distractions, I thought of as an adversary, as a competitor, as something that was trying to keep me from winning or keep me from accomplishing those goals. And so that was motivation in of itself. You wake up every morning, you go, freaking, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to crush. It wasn't a person. It wasn't actual competitors. It was the things that were trying to distract me from the progress.
Yep.
And so,
well, I think a lot of people can learn from what you said. I mean, I desire for every agent to have a goal that matters to them and to be willing to put in the work that requires them to hit the goal.
Yeah.
I don't care what the goal is, but just be willing to put in the work to hit the goal that you create.
I love it. All right. So bringing it back to the time of year that we're in.
Yeah.
And people doing this, I kind of want to go back. We kind of stopped our step-by-step instructions at listings, right? And then they got to think about the buy side. And man, we could have a whole nother podcast about the buy side right now with the post-NAR settlement and everything else. Let's skip all of that and assume that people have figured out how to continue to work with buyers. Yep. It's open houses, by the way. That's what I think, but we'll do that on another podcast. Yeah. You figured out a way to work with buyers. It's the same thing. You're just figuring out how many are going to come, break that down into 20% Q1, 30, 20. okay, I figured that out. How do you take those numbers and turn it into a plan?
Okay, well, there's several different aspects. All we talked about there, everything we talked about there with numbers and the goal setting and the percentages, that's basically just the economic model, right? There's 3 other aspects of a business plan. There's the economic model, there's the budget model, there's the lead generation model, and then there's the organizational model. So economic model, budget model, lead gen model, org model. So I believe you got to start with the economic model, but they all play off of each other. And you'll kind of need to tweak each one as you go. So with the economic model, I started with net. I said I would spend $8,000 a month. I rounded up to $100,000 for the year, and then kept working the numbers up. So the next thing I'm going to do is go build out my budget model. And I wouldn't say it's in this order, but they all need to get done.
Sure.
So the next thing is $100,000 accurate, right? Is it really going to cost me 60 or is it going to cost me 160? Because if I have a plan to sell 50 homes, but I go from spending 160 instead of 100, well, 60 grand got eaten up a profit.
Yeah.
Right. So on the budget model is $100,000 a month enough? So people should be thinking about compensation, right? So do they have an assistant? Are they factoring in payroll taxes? Are they factoring in the cost to run payroll? All the expenses of being a business owner. Lead gen, and one that I see all the time in the model we talked about, they had to take 35 listings to sell 25. Well, what's your average photography cost? What percentage of them are going to require staging? How much do you spend on these things? Make sure the budget model matches the production requirements.
Right.
Your occupancy, your rent, your office supplies, your attorneys, your CPA, all that stuff. The best thing that I would consider is go back at the last 12 months of your business expenses, and everything that is like, oh, well, that was just a one-off thing. Make sure all those one-off things are in your budget model, right? Because there's a lot of one-off things.
A lot.
There's a lot of them. Your dues. So the next step is $100,000 real. Now, let's say it's not. Let's say I do this whole thing. I'm like, it's going to cost $130. Okay, well, I first would go through and say, is 130 accurate? Is it really 150? Okay, it's 130. All right, can I make it 120? Nope, it's 130. Okay, we did that. Well, now we need to go adjust our economic model.
Right.
If I still want to net $250,000, now that might mean I need to sell 56 homes or whatever, right? So they kind of tweak. So let's say I got through that. I got through my budget model. I got through my economic model. I feel good about the budget. Which, by the way, if I said it's going to spend 130 and at the end of the year you spent 160, one of 2 things happened. Either 1, you weren't detailed enough in your budget model, or 2, you weren't disciplined enough to say no. One of those 2 things, right?
It's always discipline.
A lot of times discipline. Yeah, don't go buy the stuff at the conferences unless it's REDX or Clarity Now.
That's right.
Or better yet, just put it in the budget model to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have economic model and budget model. The next one is the org model. Okay?
Wait, I look, you made a joke there, but I think where you're bringing up a really valid point, because we do a lot of conferences and we get a lot of people that go, oh, I wasn't planning on doing this. And we go, well, we don't want you to sign up and not use it. Like, have you,
Yes.
Do you have time to invest in this? Do you have the resources? Do you have the support? Do you have the mechanisms to follow up and convert? Because it costs us a lot of money to train customers in the first month if they're just going to bail anyway also. So,
Yeah.
But that happens a lot. People get emotional and they get excited, and not that we don't want people to keep, buying stuff at conferences, but I think it's important that people understand that when you have an economic and when you have a business plan and you're halfway through the year, the only thing that you should be buying, in my opinion, maybe you think differently, Jeremy, but is if you're looking and you're not on track to hit your goals, and then you've got to figure out, okay, what do I need to pivot or do differently to get back on track to hit my goals?
Yep.
And that could be a change in lead gen. That could be, but you don't want to go start spending $1,500 a month on somebody doing Facebook ads for you if you don't understand the result. If it's not predictable, how can you bake it into the economic and budget model without giving it a lot of of grace and
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
it's a good point, and you're right. What I would consider, it's just like flipping a house. If I were to buy a house and say I really think the contractor came in, it's going to be a $50,000 rehab. Well, you run your numbers based on 10, 15, 20% overage of that, right? Okay, he said 50, I'm counting on 60. We put a variable in there. So same thing is true. So if you know that you're the kind of person that does like shiny objects and is prone to buy something throughout the year, put a line in the budget item for that.
You just described realtors, by the way.
Yeah, I did. So throw $3,000 a year in there for unknowns that you may do that. Now, the one thing I will say, and this is again a whole separate podcast, is let's say to your scenario that you're behind goal, you go to a conference, I need to do something different, and boom, shiny object is $1,500 a month. Okay. There's a question I ask myself all the time. And if I have to ask this, I know the answer. Okay. It's, am I doing what's easiest or am I doing what's best? Oftentimes, I don't need to spend the $1,500. I just need to get freaking back on the phone. I need to actually follow up. I need to actually call my database, right? I wouldn't be behind if I had treated the last 6 months differently. Now, if you have done that and you are behind and you really think you need an additional lead gen lever, then great, go spend the $1,500. But don't spend the $1,500 as another easy button. So be honest with yourself on that. But to your point, throw a variable or a variance, I should say, in the budget, in the line item for the budget.
Love it. Okay, so I got budget, lead gen. Briefly touch on lead gen model and org model.
Yeah, so lead gen model. I'll go quick on this. This is a really good, simple rule of thumb, is that 90% of your production should typically come from 5 lead sources or less. Okay, so if I want to sell 50 homes, my economic model says 50 homes. 90% of 50 is what, 45, right? So I should be able to show myself what 5 lead sources or less will equal 45 sales. So database, last year I did 12. I'm pretty confident I can get that to 18. Expired, I did 6. I think I can get that to 12. You know, open houses, I did 1. I want to get that to 4. You go down that path. So if you go through the lead gen model and you're bumping out your sources and how much production should come from each one, at the end of that, you'll look at that and say, honestly, I think I got this in the bag. I think I can do this. Or you'll say, crap, my 5 sources add up to 27. And now we need to look at, what needs to change, right? Yeah. So that's a really easy one. 90% should come from 5 lead sources or less.
I love that.
And definitely probably the biggest part of a lead gen model is your database plan. How are you communicating with your database? Yeah. Make sure that is finally get that thing built out, systemize, calendarize, add value. Don't just make it spam, right? Like really, we all should be spending time on that.
Right. What's crazy if you really break this down, and you break it down into actionable tasks, right? So, okay, I'm going to get one of your examples was, I'm going to do 18 from my database. Okay, I'm going to do 18 for your database. What assume that's not going to happen without your proaction. So what do you have to do to ensure those 18?
Oh, yeah.
And you break that all the way down into a daily actionable task. All of a sudden your business becomes really predictable. And I just know there's people listening, and this, go ahead and comment if this is you, if you want the public accountability, but there's people listening right now that are going, I got into this business for freedom. I don't want a boss. I don't want to have that type of rigidity in my day and my schedule and my business. And people forget that freedom is found within discipline, right? Oh, yeah. Am I more free because I wake up early and go to the gym every day? And, does that create more freedom and opportunity? Or doesn't it, right? If I choose not to go out on the weekends with my friends because I'm going to do something on Saturday that's productive and meaningful to my progression and to my purpose and goals. And so, you got into this business for freedom, but I hope this isn't, I'm not the bearer of bad news, but that freedom comes through discipline.
No, it's well said. That goes back to the James Clear quote, right? Either do the activities to hit the goal or quit saying you want the goal.
Yeah.
It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Good job.
Change the goal. All right. Org model.
Org model is simple. It's what means simple, but not simple, depending upon your size.
Yeah.
What people do you need in your team to accomplish the goal?
Yeah.
So if I'm doing 50 units, at that point, do I need an admin? Can I use a transaction coordination service, or does my office provide something, or do I need a showing assistant or a buyer's agent or listing agent or whatever, right? So what are the people that you need to make this come a reality? Can I give a really quick tip on this? This is specifically for teams. Individual agents, hear this from when you build a team. There's a phenomenal model that I've learned over the years of coaching that I see true all the time. It's that as you build a team, let's say in this case, it's a rainmaker or a lead agent and 6 agents on their team, okay? The primary agent, the lead agent, they will almost always do the level of production they said they would. I know, sign me up for 50 houses, they'll hit their 50, but the goal is 150, so I need 100 to come from the team. The lead agent will almost always hit their production, but the team ended up selling 60, right? And the reason being more times than not is because they recruited too late. People need a ramp up time, right? And there's a bunch of other reasons too. Could be the wrong person, and that's part of the growth process. But there's a great model that's an unsexy name. It's called the 4-1-7-1-10-1. And that stands for April 1st, July 1st, October 1st. What the 4-1 is that by April 1st, that economic model, org model, budget model that we mentioned, the whole business plan, your business plan for next year should really be built by April 1st. April 1st, we should already be done. So if you're a large team and you're just not getting into business planning, I'm telling you, you're way behind, right? The 7-1 is all the people that I need, specifically the agents, all the people that I need on my team to hit next year's goal needs to be on my team by July 1 the previous year. That allows for 6 months of ramp up before I truly need their production for the business plan. That's where they screw up. They hire someone in February for that calendar year. Their first closing is not until May, and they sold 9 houses the whole year. Right. Right. Next year they'll sell 30. And then the 10-1 goes back to the first part of our conversation of the goal gap and getting started sooner for the listing activities. So if you're a big team, the 7-1 is really important. Make sure you have enough people on the team by July 1st to hit the goal. The very last thing, I'll throw this out quick, so never short on time here, is I also have what I call my 70% rule. This is a complete Jeremy Herrman original, so feel free to poke holes in it. Is if I talk to a team member and they say their goal is to sell 30 homes, I'm going to coach, I'm going to support, I'm going to do all that I can to help them hit 30 goals. From a business plan perspective, I'm banking on them hitting 70% of whatever they say their goal is. Yeah. So if they say 30, to the side, I'm writing 30/21. Right? So if I need 100 sales coming from team members, I need to have enough agents who collectively want to sell 130. Right. For them all to miss their goal by 70% and still hit the 100 the business needs.
Yeah. I love that. Well, look, I'm just going to say it now. We need to have a follow-up podcast where we talk about now taking all of this because where people lose sight, this all makes sense. And they go, okay, but what do I do? Yeah. There's a lot of questions. What do I do now? And what do I track on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to know if I'm working? Like, where's the dummy lights like on a dashboard that say, hey, something's wrong, you need to check these things? And I would love to get into that. Go ahead and comment if you'd like us to have Jeremy back on to get into those types of details now. Jeremy, where can people find you and more about Clarity Now and all of these things?
Yes. Me, feel free to email me. It's jeremy@claritynowre.com, as in real estate, jeremy@claritynowre.com. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's nothing special, but jherman24@gmail.com. Actually, no, that's my jherman24 is my Instagram handle. Okay. 24 for Kobe Bryant. And then our website is www.claritynowre.com.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much. Everybody, We're here every Thursday streaming on whatever platform you're on, 50 different platforms. So we're grateful that you're here.
Thank you.
Add your comments. If your questions didn't answer, we didn't, go ahead and put those in there and we'll still follow up with you with those questions. Jeremy, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Curtis.